Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We'll call to order the September 6, 2023 meeting of the Council of City of Springdale. I would ask that you rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Ms. McNear, you do roll call.
Mr. Anderson?
Present.
Mrs. Santos? Mr. Hawkins?
Present.
Mr. Jacobs?
Present.
Mr. Ramirez?
Present.
Mrs. Sullivan-Weiskup?
Present.
Mr. Vanover?
Present. Council, before we dive in the minutes, you should have received corrected minutes. The date on the initial was incorrect, and I picked up, and Mr. Anderson also made note, on our page 9, it's actually in the official, it's page 1, 2, 3, 3, 4. It's down in the bottom third. It's essentially a typo, a homonym situation where the word council, C-O-U-N-S-E-L, should replace council, C-O-U-N-C-I-L. So, but other than that, that's all I have. Are there any additions or corrections otherwise? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to adopt.
Motion second, discussion. All right, all those approving the minutes as published signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The minutes are approved with 6 affirmative votes. All right, communications. Ms. McNear, are there any communications this evening?
Nothing this evening, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, at this point, we'll open the floor for communications from the audience. Anybody in the audience like to address council? Please come forward. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm David Stowe, and I'm proposing a jake brake ordinance on Crescentville Road on the new stretch from Tivoli down to Chesterdale Avenue. During a snow emergency, that's a possibility that could be put on if we get a sign up or whatever. But the truck traffic is horrendous, and it's a residential area and Heritage Hill going down that area. So we all feel in the neighborhood that it should have a jake brake restriction. Rattles my windows and
Okay.
very loud.
Just for the record, what's your address?
Well, I live at 990 East Crescentville Road.
Okay. So, I don't disagree with you, and that's something I know I have talked about in the past, and primarily 275 too, because that's my backyard. But we'll run it to the administration and see what we can do. Mr. Yule.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind signing in on the sheet there with your name
Yeah.
and a address and either a phone number or email address, and
Will do.
we'll check in our code to see if it's permitted, and then we'll see
Yeah.
what other options are potentially available to us.
I mean, there's one on 747 down further past Mulhauser, I believe, and it's not a residential area, so. And then, the other issues are the loud cars and the loud stereos.
Sorry.
Is-
Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I seem to recall us talking about this when we were doing the warehouses. I thought we had in the covenants already a prohibition for that down 747 and Crescentville. So I guess what I'm saying is, would it also be inside of there? Because we talked about truck traffic when we were doing the PUD discussion. Does that sound familiar to anyone else? I remember us talking about braking.
Well, I know in different, and even in some of our zoning redos, it's been brought up. So it may be just something that you know, get taken care of.
Yeah, I'm 100% for it. I thought we already had a prohibition there, so I'm surprised that it's not. Maybe we just need more signs if that's the case.
Right. Ms. Weisskopf?
Thank you, Mr. President. I agree with you, Mr. Anderson. That's what I was saying to Mr. Venter beforehand, is that I remembered that when we were specifically dealing with strategic, that I thought that we had addressed the Jake breaking, but I didn't know exactly, that was a while ago, so I don't off the top of my head know exactly what it was, so it's very possible that it is.
Thank you for coming in. Yes, thank you. All right, communication from the audience, floor still open.
Good evening. My name is John Menchen. That's spelled M-E-N-C-H-E-N. I reside at 11720 Van Camp Lane. I've only lived in Springdale for a few months. I've been living in other parts of Ohio as well. And what I have found is that the construction in other areas appears to be endless, to the point where people are making this joke that if you want to plant the state flower, it's a traffic cone in a pothole. I'm also concerned with how long the project happened, or the project that took place on East Kemper Road. I'm not really sure what was happening there, along with some paving, perhaps. But that seemed to take about maybe 10, 12 weeks, and then at the same time, Forest Park was doing something on their end of Kemper Road. So you had both things happening at the same time, and there's this crunch of traffic. And the fact that it's seemingly going on, you know, statewide, and I know we can't control statewide, but it would, I think, be a much better use of everyone's time with the construction if we only did maybe one thing in Springdale, and that would be with the unoccupied buildings on Tri-County Mall, where they're knocked down, nobody's occupying them, so they're better off just being knocked down, and we can put up trees, you know, make the air cleaner from what's coming off of 275 and on 747, because when you have the construction like you do, the traffic won't be used to it, because lanes will be constantly changing. You'll have, again, more traffic cones, and the driving public is always at risk for these kinds of changes. And there has to be a point where we say, enough is enough. We've done everything we need to do, and call it done. And that's what I would like for the council to consider, a point where we can just call it done.
Ms. Weisskopf?
That's my clarification. You mean you don't want us to do any updates on our streets, or you don't want us to do any updates? Because Tri-County Mall, we don't own. So that's not, we can't knock that down. We don't own that. But I'm trying to understand, because I know what you're talking about on Kemper Road, where we had things that we had done, as well as over in the Heritage Hill area, there was like the road construction that was done with Butler County and things like that. So we do things in conjoinment with other people, and so the things that we're having done were different from what Forest Park was having done. So if they had theirs done finished faster or things like that, they had a whole different scope, a whole different thing that they were doing than what we were doing. So that's why ours might take longer than somebody else's or something like that. It just depends on the job. But I just want to make sure that I understand what you're asking. Are you asking like about road work? You don't want us to do any more road work, or are you talking about buildings? I want to make sure I understand.
What I'm mainly concerned about is the risk that this sort of activity presents to the driving public, especially when seemingly every year there's something else that's happening. So what I'm asking for is a point where we say it's done. We've done all the improvements that we can possibly do on these streets, and then we're done. And I have yet to see that happen. And as I said, I've lived in different parts of Ohio, and there was, when I was living up by Dayton, that one junction of Interstate 75 and US 35, that took 10 years to finish. I really don't know how we're expected to be patient with something like that. So, yes, we do have to make improvements to the roads, but really there has to be a point where we say, it's done. It's up to code. It's where it needs to be.
Mr. Riggs?
Thank you. The project you referred to on Kemper Road on East Kemper, that was
Yeah.
a bridge bridge repair project, and we replaced the deck. So there was a lot of work going on underneath the bridge while, you know, the lanes may have been closed above. It did take a long time to complete. And there was a lot of traffic patterns changes because we had to maintain traffic. So there was a lot of lane jockeying, moving around just to keep traffic flowing through the area. Now, as far as the projects in the area, this summer was an unusually busy summer in terms of construction. It could be a good or bad thing depending how you look at it. We made a lot of improvements. I mean, you know, Kemper being one of them, Crescentville Road, Ray Norrish. I mean, we got 747 going on. We got Route 4. It just so happened it was a perfect storm of where all the funding, the money came to be this year. And, you know, in hindsight, yeah, it'd probably been better if we can try to look at, you know, coordinating the capital investments with the neighboring communities. But a lot of the times we're just at the mercy of the grants and the funding programs that we're a part of. So I do agree that we did have a lot going on. As far as being done, we have a comprehensive plan and a connectivity plan that outlines a lot of recommendations that's for the future that we're still trying to pursue. But we can definitely look at trying to coordinating those better with the adjacent communities as well as ODOT. But we're unfortunately far from done.
Do we have any ballpark figures for done?
The connectivity plan had, I forget the exact number, but it was $20 million worth of recommended improvements. Now, the funding for all those improvements haven't been identified, so we're still trying to pursue funding. And that's the unfortunate thing that we're up against is we're trying to prioritize the projects, go after funding, but we're at the mercy of when we actually get funding to go to construction. So it's really hard to coordinate, but we'll make better attempts at doing so, especially when we know ODOT has a busy construction season or an adjacent community has a lot going on too, because it's not really fair to the public to, you know, be sandwiched in between two construction zones.
And also for it to just be, as I
Yeah.
had said, every season there's something else happening.
Yeah, and a lot of that too is driven by private development. So, you know, as soon as the mall takes off, when that gets going, it's going to look a lot different around the area as well. So it's you know, we're trying to meet the demands of the private sector as well as, you know, trying to maintain our own assets as, you know, with traffic signals, roadways, bridges, culverts, you name it.
Thank you, sir. Mayor Webster?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. We have 138 lane miles in the city of Springdale, and there's no way that our budget would allow us to maintain those 138 lane miles without some outside funding. So as Mr. Riggs indicated, a lot of this, when we do these projects, a lot of it has to do with when the funding becomes available. I mean, we try to stay on top of this and look ahead, and okay, say Ray Norris Drive needs, we know it's gonna need resurfacing, so we might make an application this year, and it might be 2 or 3 years before we get that. So once we get it though, we usually have to act on it. We can't stall it off a lot of times. And then the other thing is a lot of these projects we do in concert with the neighboring community. And so, yeah, we might be the lead agent, well, like Crescentfield Road, I mean, it's been on the drawing board for 20 years probably. And we finally got all of our ducks lined up and everything fell in place this year. And I think Butler County was the driving force behind it. They were the controlling force, but all we did was make a contribution to that. But I mean, a lot of these things are out of our control as far as timing. But when you live in an area like we live in, with all the freeze and the thaw cycles that we go through every year, you're never going to be able to fix a road and walk away from it. That's never going to happen. There's constant maintenance. And so I don't see any end in sight. Now, as Mr. Riggs indicated, this was an extraordinary season because we had the huge project on Crescentville Road. We had the one on Kemper. and 747. And we're not through yet. We're still got some resurfacing to do on 747. And so I just don't, I hear what you're saying, but that world doesn't exist. We're not gonna just repair a road and walk away and never have to go back to it. It's a constant thing. We do the best job we can of maintaining traffic and making it as convenient for businesses and people to patronize those businesses as we can, but there's gonna be some inconvenience. You just can't help it.
Mr. Hawkins?
Thank you, Mr. President. And just piggybacking, I appreciate the inconvenience that it is. I personally have a business that's in Forest Park off of West Kemper, and that was a nightmare on a regular basis going back and forth from Springdale, working my way up through Kemper. But as it's been indicated, the infrastructure is critical for our residents and for businesses coming through here. So but back in 08, 09, before 09, there was the city was on a schedule to make sure that we were keeping up with the roads. About $750,000 to $1 million would go in annually around the city in various places just to make sure that you don't have a pothole in front of your home and that businesses have good roadways going back and forth to keep attracting them to come in. I can tell you this, that the city picks vendors, the administration gets approved by council, individuals that do a very good job in terms of how they go through and manage that and manage traffic. And I say that in comparison to there's some other neighboring cities that don't do a good job with regard to that. They maybe have one flagger instead of having flaggers on each side that are communicating back and forth. So Springdale does, they're cognizant and aware of making sure that we make this as less of an inconvenience for our residents and our folks coming through here as we can, because we know it's inconvenient. We know that it is. And as indicated, we do try to plan it out, but sometimes when the money becomes available, we got to use it at that point in time. So we're aware of it, we appreciate your concerns on it, but it's something where we try to make it as easygoing as possible for you and for ourselves and business holders in the city.
Ms. McNair?
Yes, the honest truth is, you better get used to the color orange. We will never be finished doing road repair, and not just the city of Springdale, but any place where we have the cold, the freeze, the hot weather, and that's a good thing. As annoying as it is, and trust me, my street has been closed down more times than you can imagine this summer, because the alternative is potholes. And if you live in a place where they don't fix the roads, it's really terrible. I come from Philadelphia, where your whole car will get lost in a pothole. So it is annoying. My whole street was torn up. My yard was torn up this summer because of the things that were done up there. But the honest to God truth is, we will never stop fixing our roads, because that's part of our job up here, is to make sure that you have roads that are drivable. Now, if you look at 75, they've probably been working on that section over by Princeton High School for a good 10 years. We were just driving down there the other day, and I said to my husband, I think they were working on this 5 years before you retired, and he's been retired for 3. Mm-hmm. And they're nowhere close to being finished. Now, as soon as they finish that section where they've been working now, it's going to be in a condition that they have to start over again. So the honest truth is, we're never going to be finished. And remember, it's a good thing. As annoying as it is, it's a good thing. And I'm sorry, I wish we had better news to give you, but it's the good news, bad news story. But thanks for coming in and sharing your pain, and we feel it too. Thank you.
Do I need to sign in here, or?
Yeah.
Put your name and address.
Sure. All right, where's that? It's the 6th, actually. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, we're still in communications from the audience. Second call. Third and final call will close communications from the audience. Council, at this point, we're ready for our ordinances and resolutions. And first off this evening is ordinance number 36. Administration? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. President. We would like, if it's okay at this time, if we could get Mr. Wilson from Parks and Rec up before we go to the ordinances.
Sure.
Thank you.
That's fine.
I appreciate you guys' time this evening. Tonight, I'm here to announce the 10th Annual Springdale Community Bash. It's kind of hard to believe that it has been 10 years since moving here and us starting this program or this event. So the event and festivities will take place this Saturday, September 9th. Down over at the community center. I'm sure some of you have seen some of the work that's getting done for the Mud Quest. We'll kick off the festivities at 1 p.m. with our family Mud Quest. And for those of you who don't know, our Mud Quest is a family-oriented mud obstacle course built for everybody to enjoy. Now, we are taking registration, but spots are filling up. So if you're going to sign up, please do so in a timely manner. And then starting at 3 p.m. is when we open up the rest of the festivities. We've invited a lot of nonprofit and local groups to help support themselves. They're going to sell food, drinks, and yes, they will sell alcohol. And then we also plan on having a few family-friendly events. We plan on having our climbing wall, inflatable games, face painting, the petting zoo. And then backed by popular demand, we plan on having the funnel cake food truck and the dog trick show. So we plan on having two separate dog trick shows. One will be at 5:30 and the other will be at 7 p.m. And those will last about 30 minutes. After those are over, the bands will start. So we have two bands planned for the evening. One will be at 6 p.m., which is Just Vince and the Fellas. And then the next will be at 8 p.m., which is My Girl Friday. And I believe that's all I have for you guys. Any questions?
Ms. McNear?
Thank you, Mr. President. Hey, Charlie, thanks for coming this evening. Just wanted to bug you again about when will the pony rides return, because I was really looking forward to seeing my granddaughter ride bareback with her hair on fire.
No, absolutely. And that's something we can check into again for next year. But she will get some exposure to some animals. We will have our petting zoo, so she'll have to fake it for now. So,
Thanks.
yeah.
All right, that's pretty much it. Thank you, Charlie.
All right. Thank you all for your time.
Have a good evening.
You too.
All right, ordinances and resolutions. First off this evening, ordinance number 36, 2023. Ms. McNear, when you're ready.
Ordinance number 36, 2023, an ordinance authorizing the mayor and clerk of council finance director to enter into an agreement with the Board of Hamilton County Commissioners to administer the Community Revitalization Grant Award for the installation of sidewalks along Tri-County Parkway in the city of Springdale. Whereas the Hamilton County Board of County Commissioners has established a grant funding resources for cities, villages, and townships within Hamilton County for 2023 called the Community Revitalization Grant CRG program. And whereas the interested local governments could apply for funds to implement community and economic development plans, spur other development projects, remove blighted properties or conditions, and or promote economic development. And whereas the city of Springdale, the city submitted an application for an economic development project including installation of sidewalks along the south side of Tri-County Parkway from Northland Boulevard to Prince and Pike to provide better connections and accessibility to bus stops and employment centers in the city of Springdale and region. And whereas the city seeks to enter into an agreement with the Board of Hamilton County Commissioners accepting the grant funding available through Hamilton County Community Revitalization Grant Program. Now therefore be it ordained by the Council of the City of Springdale, Ohio, members elected thereto concurring. Section 1, that it is hereby declared necessary and to the best interest of the city of Springdale to enter into an agreement with the Board of Hamilton County Commissioners in connection with the Hamilton County Community Revitalization Grant Program. Section 2, the mayor and clerk of council finance director are hereby authorized and directed to execute the attached agreement for and on behalf of the city of Springdale with the Board of Hamilton County Commissioners under the terms and conditions listed in the attached agreement, which is deemed to be part of this ordinance as is fully set forth herein, and when so approved and executed shall be in full force and effect. Section 3, council hereby finds and determines that all formal actions relative to the passage of this legislation were taken in an open meeting of this council, and that all deliberations of this council and of its committees, if any, which resulted in formal action were taken in meetings open to the public in full compliance with applicable legal requirements, including Section 121.22 of the Ohio Revised Code. Section 4, this ordinance shall take effect on the earliest date allowed by law.
All right, council, this is first reading. We will see it again on the 20th, our next meeting. Are there any discussion at this point? All right, seeing none, we will see it again. Ms. Weisskopf?
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the council go into executive session pursuant to Ohio Revised Code Section 121.22G1 to discuss the compensation of a public employee.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion second. Discussion? Administration, we anticipate any action coming out? We do not, thank you. Okay, Ms. McNear, you pull council on going into executive session.
Ms. Sullivan Weisskopf?
Aye.
Mr. Hawkins?
Aye.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Mrs. What's that? Yeah, I know she, yeah. Let's see, Mr. Ramirez?
Aye.
Boy, this is really an old one here. Let's see, Mr. Jacobs?
Aye.
Mr. Vanover?
Aye. All right, council, we will retire for
I
executive
think I'm
session.
missing somebody here. Yeah, I know that. Did I get them all? Okay, thank you.
All right.